We're coming to joining this webinar from all different parts of the country. I'm hosting you from Waterloo, Ontario, and that is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee peoples, and historically the Chinootan peoples. It's Treaty 3 territory, and nestled in there is the Haldeman Tract, which was the land promised in perpetuity to the Six Nations of the Grand River. The Grand River itself has been a great water highway for millennia, and it's referred to locally as Osigonyan Hodaji, or in the Anishinaabe languages, is Awashanangzibi. It's really important for Our Living Waters to make those place-based connections when we're hosting conversations like this, and to remember that others were stewarding the waters long before we arrived as settlers. Personally, my family arrived in the area quite a while ago and farmed on the banks of the Grand River for 100 years. And so I feel a deep sense of obligation to this river and to this watershed, and take land stewardship very seriously. So please feel free to share where you're coming from today in the chat. I'm going to introduce our first panelist. So joining us from the Canada Water Agency is Gemma Boag. Gemma is the Director General of Freshwater Policy and Engagement. Gemma is, her team leads policy engagement communications functions for the Canada Water Agency. And previously, Gemma worked at a number of other federal government departments, including Environment Climate Change Canada, the federal government, Treasury Board of Canada, Secretariat, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, as well as the federal court. And Gemma studied in the area of water policy for her master's and is also trained as a lawyer. So Natalia will be putting the bios in the chat. Okay, over to you, Gemma.
OK, merci. Alors, bonjour, bon après-midi, bonsoir à tous, peu importe d'où vous nous rejoignez. Je souhaite la bienvenue à tous les participants à cette réunion virtuelle. Nous sommes ravis de réunir à nouveau des personnes de partout au Canada pour discuter de la stratégie nationale en matière de données sur l'eau douce. L'année passée a été chargée car nous avons travaillé à la mise en place de l'Agence de l'eau du Canada au cours de notre première année complète de fonctionnement, tout en faisant progresser des initiatives telles que la stratégie en matière de données, en mettant en œuvre des programmes dans le cadre de nos initiatives relatives aux écosystèmes d'eau douce et en menant d'autres travaux. I want to acknowledge that we are meeting on Indigenous lands, so following on your comments, Julie, and to recognize the leadership of Indigenous communities across the country who have been stewards of the waters and lands we all depend on. Their knowledge and care for these ecosystems continue to guide us toward more holistic and sustainable approaches to water management. Recognizing where I'm calling from today, I'm calling in from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe. I'm calling in from Gatineau today. And again, similar to what Julie said, I encourage each of you to reflect on the traditional lands that you are joining us from today. I'm just going to provide some opening remarks on the Canada Water Agency, the work of the data strategy that is really being led by the team here, as well as working closely with collaborators across government and outside of government. But the real substance of the presentations today will be the other panelists that you'll hear from shortly. So to start off, I'd like to begin by grounding us in the freshwater realities that shape our work at the Canada Water Agency and highlight and underpin the need for collaboration on freshwater data. While Canada has about 7% of the world's renewable supply of fresh water, it's unevenly distributed across the country, and it's not always available in the quantities that we need it and when we need it. And as is the case around the world, Canada faces growing pressure on its freshwater ecosystems. We see floods and droughts intensified with climate change, infrastructure that's aging faster than we're able to renew it, contaminants that weren't on our radar a generation ago, and a steady ongoing loss of biodiversity in our lakes, rivers, and wetlands. These challenges don't stop at political borders or sectoral ones. They ripple through our economy, our communities, and our ecosystems. What happens to water affects everything else. Our food, our housing, our health, our economic competitiveness, to name a few. Addressing these challenges, as well as taking advantage of the tremendous opportunities provided by clean, accessible fresh water, depends on our ability to work collaboratively. Fresh water is one of our greatest national assets, and it also comes with a profound responsibility. It is in this context that the Canada Water Agency, alongside our partners, is leading the development of a national freshwater data strategy. The data strategy work cuts across the agency's core mission, which we action through 5 work streams. The agency aims to first restore and protect with partners transboundary and nationally significant freshwater ecosystems. Second, anticipate and proactively respond to Canada's most pressing freshwater challenges and opportunities. Third, create impactful partnerships to responsibly steward and sustainably use Canada's transboundary freshwater ecosystems. Fourth, cultivate water awareness in Canada. And fifth, translate freshwater science and data into knowledge to inform decision-making. The National Freshwater Data Strategy is an opportunity to meaningfully work towards each of these priorities in collaboration with partners. Our efforts toward developing a data strategy are grounded in the knowledge, expertise, and guidance provided by many of you on today's webinar. During the engagements that led to the development of the Canada Water Agency, many emphasized the need for a shared foundation of freshwater knowledge. You told us that an early priority for the agency should be to build a strategy that supports a more coordinated, integrated, and standardized approach to data collection, management, and sharing. And your voices were heard. Work began on a national freshwater data strategy in February 2024, and continuing the development of this strategy has continued to be a priority of the Canada Water Agency since it was established as a standalone agency in the federal system in October 2024. The main goal of the data strategy is, put simply, to make it easier for Canadians to find, access, and use and combine freshwater data. But as many of you on this webinar know, that's not a simple task. Canada has an abundance of freshwater data, but it's not always easily available or easy to integrate across data sets. The National Freshwater Data Strategy aims to help establish guidelines and principles for how freshwater information should be organized, stored, and shared in Canada. Once implemented, our hope is that a data strategy will help ensure Canadians can find and access freshwater data that strengthens freshwater decision-making and knowledge generation going forward. But of course, building such a strategy cannot be done alone. Like so many freshwater issues, it requires close collaboration with Indigenous partners, provinces and territories, municipalities, industry, academia, civil society, and knowledge holders from across the water community. Nous sommes impatients de vous en dire plus sur la stratégie nationale en matière de données sur l'eau douce au cours de ce webinaire, d'apprendre des experts qui ont gracieusement accepté de partager leur expérience et leur expertise aujourd'hui, et surtout d'entendre vos commentaires. Merci beaucoup de vous être joint à nous. Je retourne la parole à Julie. Julie, I'll turn the floor back to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gemma. We really appreciate you just setting us up in that way. Our next speaker is going to be Alexandre Bourquevien, Senior Policy Advisor, Office of the Chief Science Advisor. So, what we're going to hear about now is the Scientific Data Governance Framework. And let me just introduce Alexandre briefly. Alexandre played a key role in preparing the Chief Science Advisor of Canada's recent report towards a national scientific data governance framework. And he has been with the Office of the Chief Science Advisor since March 2020. After contributing to the COVID-19 response, he focused on open science initiatives, research infrastructure, critical and emerging technologies like quantum computing. I live across the street from quantum scientists, so this is very exciting for me, as well as artificial intelligence and federal science and technology governance. Since starting his government career in 2011, he has worked on science policy in both the Science and Technology branch at Environment and Climate Change Canada and the Office of the Chief Scientist at Natural Resources Canada. Mr. Bourquevien holds a Bachelor of Science in Physics, a Master's of Science in Physiology, and a PhD in Electrical Engineering from Université de Sherbrooke. Before entering the federal public service, he directed a university training center, taught courses, and led a regional innovation observatory. Over to you, Alexander.
Thank you very much. The introduction may be longer than my presentation. Merci, Julie. So let me share my screen to start with. I think this should do it. So you should see my presentation. Yes, okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So thanks for the invitation and for the opportunity to share our work with you today. J'aimerais d'abord remercier les organisateurs pour l'invitation et l'opportunité de vous parler aujourd'hui du rapport de la conseillère scientifique en chef du Canada qui porte sur la gouvernance des données scientifiques. I assume that this audience is deeply engaged with freshwater data, how it is collected, shared, protected, and ultimately used to support better decisions. My goal today is to take a step back and situate freshwater data governance within a broader national conversation, that is, on how Canada governs or should govern scientific data as a strategic asset. The title, Implementing a National Scientific Data Governance Framework, may sound abstract, but I'll do my best to make the topic concrete. Trying to shift the slide. There we go. So our report opens with a very direct statement from the Chief Science Advisor, Dr. Mona Niemer. It says, put plainly, scientific data is more valuable than ever. This is not just a catchy statement, it's an observation grounded on how science is now conducted. With the rapid adoption of digital technologies in science, the rise of artificial intelligence, and major advances in data engineering and data analytics, scientific data has become one of Canada's most valuable public assets. But what is especially important to acknowledge is where this value increasingly comes from. It is not only from data being collected not being collected once and used for a single purpose. Data's value increasingly comes from reuse. Reuse across disciplines, reuse across jurisdictions, reuse over time, and increasingly, reuse by machines as well as by people. C'est la réutilisation des données qui génère une part de plus en plus grande de la valeur des données scientifiques. But for that value to be realized, however, data must be well stewarded. That means ensuring data quality and integrity, ensuring interoperability across systems, and ensuring that data can be reused within a clear, trusted, and ethical governance framework. And this is where governance becomes essential. Effective data governance is what allows Canada to maximize benefits to its research and innovation ecosystem while still protecting sensitive information, respecting legal, ethical, and Indigenous data considerations. At a national level, maximizing the benefits of scientific data is a complex challenge. It requires coordinated decisions by many individuals across many organizations, supporting goals that can sometimes pull in different directions, such as promoting openness and collaboration while protecting privacy and sensitive information. Governance at its core is about making those decisions coherently and collectively. Such decisions include making decisions about secure data storage and infrastructure, access rights and conditions, ethical use and safeguards against misuse and manipulation. This is why we argue that strong scientific data governance is not an administrative afterthought. It's a foundational step towards improving current and future science, technology, and innovation performance in Canada. Une gouvernance efficace des données scientifiques est fondamentale pour améliorer la performance présente et future du Canada en matière de science, de technologie et d'innovation. Importantly, this is also how many of you already think about freshwater data. Freshwater data is mission critical, high value, and deeply interconnected across institutions and jurisdictions. So the issue is shared. Recognizing both value and the complexity of data governance, our report outlines a clear desired outcome. Canada must adopt a national scientific data governance framework to protect and effectively manage data arising from publicly funded science activities, and I'll underscore that, promote its reuse as a cornerstone of discovery, innovation, and economic prosperity. To move from aspiration to action, the report proposes a 5-point action plan, not as a blueprint to be imposed everywhere, but as a way to pave the road towards increasingly effective governance. Let me briefly walk you through these 5 elements. So first, establish a Canadian focal point. So designate an organization to federate actors across data domain, foster coherence, and support a unified national approach to scientific data governance. This is about coordination, not control. It is about addressing fragmentation between data domains across the whole Canadian scientific data system. The second one, promoting data domain leadership. And this is something very relevant for the discussion today, I think. Encourage leadership within specific data domains, such as freshwater data. To mobilize stakeholders, align practice, and generate efficiencies through collaboration and shared resources. And this is about addressing fragmentation between organizations within a given data domain. Adopt shared standards and tools. So common standards, operating procedures, and technical tools, which are essential for interoperability, stewardship, reuse, and AI-enabled analytics within and across domains. Enhance security measures. Data must be treated as a national asset. That means robust approaches to cybersecurity, integrity, privacy protection, and risk mitigation. Grow workforce capacity and digital skills. Basically, none of this works without people, obviously. So we need skilled professionals to design and operate digital systems, and strong data literacy among producers and users of data. Together, these actions define a path towards better governance, not just for science in general, but for priority domains like freshwater. That said, we recognize an important limitation. A national action plan, by definition, cannot account for every context, scale, or institutional reality. So in addition to the action plan, the report articulates a set of guiding principles that can inform initiatives at all levels, from national strategies to organizational practices. There are 4 principles, which I admit are purposefully framed as slogans, and so maybe expect t-shirts or coffee mugs soon with all these lovely language on it. So I'll quickly walk again through the 4 ones. So reuse, recycle, reimagine. More value will be created from scientific data if reuse increases. And that's the main message of, well, one of the main messages of our report. So if reuse increases across domains, across time, and within domains. So this includes reuse enabled by AI and through emerging data value chains. Cluster for success, the benefits of shared infrastructures and expertise. are greatest when data governance is organized around domains that achieve critical mass, addressing fragmentation. Lead the way. Meaningful improvement depends on empowered domain-specific leaders who can champion common standards, infrastructure, and collaboration. Last one, row in the same direction. Aligning incentives across funding bodies, regulators, and institutions dramatically accelerates the adoption of harmonized data governance and practices. Taken together, these principles offer a flexible lens, not a checklist. They can help inform, for instance, the design of a national freshwater data strategy, decisions within your organizations, and collaboration across jurisdictions and sectors. I'll close with why getting this right matters so much. Les données sur l'eau douce sont extraordinairement précieuses. Elles favorisent une meilleure prise de décision. Elles permettent la surveillance et la prévision. Elles renforcent la génération de connaissances dans les domaines des sciences, des politiques et des communautés. En fin de compte, elles contribuent à garder l'eau douce sécuritaire, propre et bien gérée. Freshwater data is extraordinarily valuable. It supports better decision-making. It enables monitoring and forecasting. It strengthens knowledge generation across science, policy, and communities. Ultimately, it helps keep freshwater safe, clean, and well-managed. And water, of course, is essential for life. So yes, there's a little bit of pressure here for all of you to get this right. But no pressure. no real pressure. Because when data governance is done well, it doesn't slow things down. It enables trust and reuse. And so I'll leave you with a short thought. So if Canada gets freshwater data governance right, so what we will do is not just improve systems, which are abstract, but we improved outcomes for people, for ecosystems and future generations, which are really concrete. So no pressure, but little pressure. I'd like to take a quick moment just to thank the members of the advisory committee for this report who are listed on this slide, and address special thanks to Amy Buckland and David Castle who for their leadership in co-chairing the advisory committee. As you probably understand, that all I've spoken about is not just my work, but is the work of that whole group. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alexandra, for that contextualization of the national data stewardship and governance process that the federal government's undertaking, and how lucky we are to have a very specific example coming to us from the Canadian Institute for Health Information. It's when we learn from one sector and are able to translate it into another sector, beginning that strategy. It's really great. Also, I'd really love to have T-shirts of your different slogans there. The rowing together is really at the heart of what Our Living Waters does, and at the heart of collective action for freshwater. And so, yeah, I definitely want that T-shirt. Okay, so next up we have Maureen Kelly, Director of Data Stewardship Initiative, Canadian Institute for Health Information. And as Director of the Data Stewardship Initiative, Maureen Kelly provides the vision and leadership for one of Canadian Institute for Health Information's key strategic initiatives to advance the adoption of a stewardship approach to Canada's health data in order to address the existing fragmentation and complexities that limit the sharing and use of health data. And I think in Canada, fragmentation is an eternal challenge. So thank you very much for contributing to this part of this conversation. Ms. Kelly has always been passionate about using data for public benefit, and she began her career at the Office for National Statistics in the UK, focused on social and population health statistics. Following a secondment at Statistics Canada, she joined CIHI in 2003 and has held several leadership positions, including the inaugural Director of Data Governance. She holds an honors Bachelor of Arts degree in Social and Political Sciences from Cambridge University, England, and a postgraduate certification in Applied Statistics. Welcome, Maureen.
All right, and thank you and welcome. I'm so happy to talk to you. There's such a essential connection between water and health, and really, and just as you mentioned, some very key parallels in terms of the challenges we face with our health data, as well as I'm learning with all of the freshwater data. So I did want to acknowledge that I am calling in from the unceded territorial lands of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people here in Ottawa, and this is the picture of the Kitchissippi, the what we now know as the Ottawa River, when it's not frozen. This was a summer picture, something I will look forward to get to. And I just before I get into my presentation, I did actually want to say that I am actually a user of freshwater data. So outside of my work, I spend a lot of time on the Ottawa River as I'm a sailor out of the Britannia Yacht Club here in Ottawa. And so I'm just going to try and move this forward. So this is some data that we use regularly that actually comes from the Ottawa River Regulation Planning Board. And in normal kind of springtime, we're looking at this because we have gates in our yacht club that we have to keep all of the spring water shed out of the yacht club. And so we look at this very closely to know when we can take the gates out so we can put our boats in the water and get out and enjoy the Ottawa River. So this is a typical year when we're trying to look at this. But we also are very conscious of the fact that in certain years we have lots of high water, really high water. So, and then in 2019, there was a really big flood. And so this is us at the Britannia Yacht Club doing sandbagging to try and avoid, well, the club flooded, but we pay attention a lot to this data as we go through the year. So just to talk, and I'll take a few minutes just to talk a little bit about the Canadian Institute for Health Information and our role, CIHI. Talk a little bit about some of the health data ecosystem and the fragmentation we have and some of the challenges that causes. Talk about how we kind of do and manage governance and some of the work that I'm leading right now around trying to adopt a data stewardship approach across the whole healthcare ecosystem. And finally, some of the work that CIHI is supporting around health data priorities of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. For those who aren't very familiar with CIHI, we're an independent not-for-profit organization that was up by the federal and provincial governments around 30 years ago, really to help improve the information we have about our health system. We provide information and data on health system and the health of Canadians. So we gather lots of information across the country to show a pan-Canadian picture. As I mentioned, we've done that. We've built up trust as a national data steward as the main kind of gatherer and packager of our health system information. Key things I just wanted to raise about what we're trying to do is really, along with a lot of data, a lot of it comes down to the people and the relationships and the organizational relationships we have, and our focus on kind of building credible relationships, our data quality, and ensuring the data that we are providing is relevant and high quality for all of those users. And in our environment with health, as many of you know, as you are accessing the health system, we're trying to constantly modernize the tools and embrace digital innovation, both for the healthcare delivery, but also on how we manage all of the information and data to enable the healthcare system to run. And let me try and move. So many probably are aware, as we're living in Canada, that we don't have one health system, we have multiple. So that fragmentation of data and services and everything kind of impacts the data. So we have our 10 provincial systems, our 3 territorial systems, federal health services. We have an increasing number of independent Indigenous health services that are building up across the country. All of which that need to share information amongst themselves and also to provide a kind of overview of what's going on in Canada as a whole. Also, we have a public-private split. About 70% of the funding for our health services comes from funding through the federal government and the provinces and territories, and 30% is privately funded. So all of those complexities that are in the health system kind of manifest themselves in the data and how we can manage the data as we go through. And we also have lots of different users of health data ourselves as patients, our families, and the public in general need to have access to our own health information, which is often a challenge these days. And especially as we're trying to connect it across all of the different health services that we access. The health providers themselves are often challenged with getting the right information about their patients at the right time to provide the best possible care. And at a more system level, our public health is critical in terms of having information to really make sure that any threats like the pandemic that we lived through a few years ago are well managed and that they can promote and protect the health and well-being of all of us. Our health system leaders need timely information to actually manage the health system and drive improvements in the health system. And our researchers and innovations and the connections with all of the science that goes on, the life sciences, in terms of how we can actually improve the health system and build innovations that we can take advantage of in our healthcare system. So as I mentioned, the challenge is fragmentation. We have lots of data silos or data islands, we sometimes refer them to. So that means that fragmentation means lost productivity, slower innovation, increased costs, which ultimately results in poorer outcomes and quality of care for all of us Canadians. And a lot of those underlying challenges, well as lots of technical issues and challenges that need to be solved within the healthcare system, a lot of them are actually related to organizational governance and human factors, which is where our data stewardship work comes in. So in terms of the work that Kai is leading on data stewardship, we've done a lot of work. We've done some foundational work over the last year and a half to really consult with our stakeholders about what they need, where some of the big challenges are. And one of the things that they told us was, well, what does good health data stewardship look like? We keep hearing that word. It means different things to different people. So we put these kind of hallmarks of what we call hallmarks of data stewardship are, which is about making data and quality data accessible and usable to those people who need it. And there's lots of different types of users. Safeguarding data against misuse. So that's not just for privacy, security, also misinterpretation of data. There's lots of health, there's lots of privacy legislation that we have to adhere to, but we also need to advance and make sure that we're working towards not just what the rules say, but are we really applying good ethical standards for our data? And then being transparent about how data is used and that accountability to all of Canada and key users and the owners of the data, which are the people, in terms of how that data is being used. So we have 4 kind of pillars of the work that we are doing. One key one is around governance and how do we make sure that we get all of the players and all of the groups to collaborate nationally on health data priorities. And we're just in the process of setting up a new governance table to kind of drive advancements forward. We've developed a framework, which I'll show you in the next slide, but we need to build data and resources to help support people take a stewardship approach. And we're working with key stakeholders to drive real-world implementation of our stewardship approach to kind of put things into practice and give people examples of how to do this in real-world examples. And also key to the work is our engagement. So we need to build up public trust and engagement, and also with First Nations, Inuit, Métis communities, to make sure that the data, however we're using the data as a society, matches and reflects public values, needs, and expectations. We presented our approach to the Conference of Deputy Ministers of Health in September, got resounding endorsement for our approach and our governance model, and we publicly released those things in November. So they're available on our website. Just in the goodness of time, I won't go into this detail, but this is our framework. And I think one key thing that is that we're looking both stewardship, both from that strategic aspects about what do we need to change in the system as a whole to really enable that data sharing and trust in the system to allow that data sharing and use in a safe and responsible way. And then also some of the operational aspects of stewardship. So people who are working with data in a day-to-day way, are they using the data and have the right skills and making sure that that is done in a responsible way as well. And last, I just wanted to touch on the work that we are doing to support First Nations, Inuit, and Métis health. And so these, sorry, just hold on. So these are a work that we're supporting in terms of Cultural Safety Measures Collaborative, which is a group that is set to set up a set of safety and Indigenous specific racism indicators for measurement and reporting. And this was really led by Indigenous participants. The collaborative is co-chaired by Dr. Marsha Addison and Brittany Bingham. And we kind of are there as a support to this work. This the intent of this was to really identify work and priorities that were really important to Indigenous peoples. And one key thing was to make sure that we have a culturally safe health system for them to work with. Membership includes First Nations, Inuit, Métis matriarchs with diverse backgrounds, including nursing, cultural safety, and academia. And all the meetings started and closed in ceremony with elders, and meetings were invited to provide cultural teachings and sit in the collaborative meetings. So this is just a quick overview of where we have been and where we are going. Really looking at foundational principles and the approach that the collaborative was going to take to the development of these indicators. Over the last year, they've done the actual indicator selection, and now the work around how to define and measure those indicators is working. And now the team, our Indigenous health team, is working with the collaborative to work on the planning and implementation of those indicators. This is just, we've selected, the collaborative selected 14 indicators, and we're working now on the reporting. So hopefully we're starting this fiscal year and doing reports on the first set of indicators, so 2 to 5, with a plan to develop the further indicators and do further reporting as we move forward. So I think I'll stop here and just say we're really trying to unlock the power of our health system's critical resource in terms of data to really improve the health system and health outcomes for Canadians. And with that, I will stop. And I know Jim is ready to finish the presentation. So thanks very much. And I apologize again for our the internet issues.
How you just kept on going. That was really fantastic. Great to have that perspective from the health sector, and really looking forward to hearing from Jim Young now on what that might mean in terms of what we bring into this water data governance space. Jim is the Chief Data Officer at the Canada Water Agency, where he leads the development and implementation of the National Freshwater Data Strategy and is driving the agency's data and AI strategy. With over 2 decades of experience in data science and meteorology, Jim has shaped both domestic and international data policy, including contributions to the World Meteorological Organization. A certified data management professional, Jim is a frequent speaker at scientific and data governance conferences where he shares insights on bridging science, policy, and technology. Jim's work emphasizes collaboration across Indigenous, provincial, and civil society partners, ensuring inclusive and impactful data strategies. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Honors Chemistry from the University of Waterloo in my hometown. Over to you, Jim.
Thanks, Julie. Merci à tous. Merci Alexandre and aussi Maureen. Thank you so much for your sharing here. I was so excited to hear your presentations, and I'm just sorry you have to sit through mine now. I just want to get started. I would like to acknowledge that where I live and work is on the treaty lands and territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the Mississauga and Chippewa nations of the Williams Treaty. I also recognize that I'm on part of the traditional territories of the Watasani and the Huron-Wendat, and that we're all stewards of the lands and waters that the Creator has entrusted in our care. Pour les francophones, ma présentation aujourd'hui sera principalement en anglais, mais mes diapos sont disponibles en français. All right, so really the presentation overview, really we're going to touch upon a little bit about what freshwater data really is scoped, and articulate a little bit of our data challenges together. And the main part of the presentation will really be touching upon the introduction of something called the National Freshwater Data Strategy. And as well, we're going to provide some feedback on some of the things that we've heard so far, pertaining to the guiding principles, as well as to our proposed vision and pillars and actions of the strategy that's coming forward. So first and foremost, every time I talk about the National Freshwater Data Strategy, first question always people ask, what do you mean by freshwater data? And especially when I'm talking to data people, they're always very specific, right? There has to be a definition. And this by no means is a definition. This is some thoughts and scoping of what we think encompasses freshwater data. So we believe freshwater data refers to data that describes both the physical and chemical characteristics of the water. So flow, the quantity of the water, the quality of the water as well as the ecological environmental data related to the water. So the aquatic ecosystems, as well as the human water needs and impacts. So industrial water usage would be an example. Freshwater data is really sort of organized and shared and stored and used in many different ways right across governments and sectors and different institutions. So we understand that the data is that foundation of the informed decision making, but it also needs to be available. It needs to be readily available and accessible. So some of our challenges that we see, and it's been articulated earlier, is that there's a fragmentation of water data across different sectors, across different jurisdictions. In many ways, we don't have that single authoritative go-to source. Data may not be centrally cataloged or standardized. We've talked about data islands or data silos, and we call it can be stranded. And really, sometimes there's that lack of availability. Well, we don't think it's available, but it is there. It's just not accessible, and it's not interoperable. And as well, unlocking really issues amongst the private sector, the clean tech areas, indigenous partners, really have to understand how to safeguard sensitive information. So the National Freshwater Data Strategy, as we're proposing, is really a strategy to really modernize and coordinate freshwater data collection, governance, and use. It's really going to be a collaborative effort. So that is the key word and key focus that I have day in and day out. It's a collaborative effort amongst everyone, provinces and territories, indigenous peoples, all the federal departments, academia, non-government organizations. And we're really understanding the Canadian context here. We really need to respect the jurisdictions and building upon the existing strengths. We're not about to tear down any existing structures or existing bodies that are already working in place. And really, we're looking at building that support for data-informed water governance as a whole. So why does it matter, or what I would like to call this slide, what's in it for me? So the implementation of a national freshwater data strategy really aims to strengthen a number of different things. We think that the development of the national freshwater data strategy, excuse me, would support better real-time decision-making. For example, flood responses or national reporting. For example, trends changing over time. We have, better ecosystem health management. Multiple sources of data could be used to determine whether a lake needs protection or to manage fisheries or recreation. A better management of cumulative effects, related to multiple users of watershed, enable and much more sustainable decision making. Better prediction, modeling. We hear from modelers all the time. They just have a need for more and more different types of data sets to build better models. Better prediction modeling of water-related events. We're going to have more and more water-related events going forward. Expected droughts, for example, based on multiple sources of data, such as stream flow, such as snowpack melt, such as precip, such as groundwater licensing. So all those things factor in. And yet all these different data sets are all in different parts, and it's really difficult to bring together. Better manage the safety of drinking water due to overuse or pollution or to saltwater pollution. To better inform policy, which economic sector is at risk during a drought. To have more strengthened climate and economic resilience. Again, I mentioned flood predictions. Those are things that are possibilities of much better data that we can work with. So what have we done? Gemma mentioned that we started off our journey in 2024. What have we done since that time? 2024, we did publish the discussion paper, the framework discussion paper, which is still up on our website right now. We also hosted an in-person workshop in Burlington, Ontario. We had over 100 individuals at that workshop. We gathered a lot of input from our colleagues and our partners from across the country. Bilaterally, we've engaged with well over 600 individuals, representing over 200 organizations in 2024. In 2025, we've continued that engagement, as well as completing a qualitative analysis from all the engagement information that we've received. And from the federal family, we've launched something called the Federal Freshwater Committee on data policy work group. So this is a gathering of the federal family together to sort of come together. There's this 20 plus federal departments, all with sort of water mandates, and really just getting the federal house in order is one of those activities that we're embarking on. So some of the feedbacks received on some of the guiding principles with development of such a national freshwater data strategy, really the key word for me is the collaboration and coordination. Those are the key words that really we need to bring together. And some of those foundational pieces that we've thought of, we've really tried to embody are foundational to us is that the building of the trust and respect across the country. So this sort of proposed vision and pillars that based on feedback that we've received has been slightly tweaked, but we think it sort of fits in terms of what we've heard so far. Our vision is really to work together to enable Canadians access to data for safe, clean, and well-managed water. And again, I mentioned the foundational principles of trust, respect, communication, and collaboration. And the four pillars that we've identified here, the four pillars are basically what will become the sections of the National Freshwater Data Strategy. And I'll spend the next few slides going over each of those pillars in a little bit more detail. So the first pillar that we've heard from our colleagues and partners across the country is on the pillar of data quality and value. Now, every time I talk about data quality, we also talk about bringing data quality and utility to really meet the needs of the users. And what it comes down to is really understanding identifying data gaps, identifying quality challenges to really make sure that the data that we have meets the user's needs. There's an expression that I've heard and practiced in previous roles is of known quality, to make sure that we know what the quality is of the data that we're collecting. As well as the support from many during engagement to really collaboratively develop freshwater data standards to strengthen interoperability of data across borders and domains. And every time I bring up standards, and I mean, I can probably speak on a whole session on just standards itself. I always bring up my favorite ISO standard. So if you work in data and you don't have an ISO standard, I highly recommend everyone to go look one up and pick one as your favorite ISO standard. So for me, my favorite ISO standard is ISO 8601, date time. Like, why in the world are we not using date time as a standard? In Canada, we have year, month, day, or is it day, month, year, or is it month, day, year? It's so confusing, and it's so unnecessarily confusing. And why do we do that? So I picked that because it's just so easy to understand, and it's so impactful. We spend so much time looking at receipts and wondering, is this the right day? Or looking at the best before date, is this month, day, year, or day, year, month? Is this still safe for me to eat? Is it best before? The second pillar that we've identified here is findable and accessible data. Really understanding where the data is. Enhancing accessibility of public data resource critical for water security, innovation, and other national priorities. Really, some of the ideas that we received on what can we do here? What can we do in improving findable and accessible data? Well, cataloging key freshwater data assets, so the public can find it, can see it, where the data exists, where is it stored. Finding ways that people can explore, both people and systems to explore public freshwater data. There's more and more AI sort of implications and applications. We need to get machines talking to machines, and they're already doing that. But without data that's in a format that can happen, it'll be very, very difficult. Making use of tools to combine data easier. Data collected in one side may not necessarily combine easily with data collected from another side, because it's different. But how do we make it so that it can be combined easily? The third pillar is the data stewardship and governance. Alex mentioned quite a bit of that, as well as Maureen. And I really feel that this is the one piece. If we can walk away from this, there's the one piece that we can say, yes, this is what we're going to do first. I would be a very happy camper. We need to understand formal responsibilities for critical data sets. We need to have that freshwater data governance for watersheds, drainage basins, and aquifers. So different scales. We're looking at different scales. We're looking at both at the local, regional, as well as national levels. We need to have some ideas to work really with the federal departments and agencies, the provincial departments and agencies, and understanding where the roles are and how to share that data properly. We engage on sort of existing governance structures. So I'm not going to say that there are no governance structures. There are existing governance structures in certain parts of the freshwater space. And I would say, let's use those existing structures. But let's build upon those structures that don't exist, that do need to be built up. And as well, strengthen connections between surface water and groundwater. So that seems to be an area where there seems to be two different solitudes talking to different areas. Water doesn't really care. Water will go from the sky to the ground to underground. It doesn't really care. So we really have to break down those human-made silos and human-made boundaries, because water does not respect that. Our fourth pillar and last one is the capacity and talent. We really have heard from our partners, from our colleagues, that we really need to have to build that capacity and sharing knowledge and tools right across the water data community. So there are parts of the country that are doing really, really well. They have built some incredible systems. They have built incredible tools. Why could we not share that right across? Some ideas on some of the collaborative actions that we could do. We can identify some of the programming within the Government of Canada to support freshwater data and information. Improve access to tools and training by elevating examples of innovation, sharing resources, and supporting community practices. Organizing best practice workshops, webinars, and really create guidance documents for effective data management. I think this is a role that we can sort of work together on and build upon. So what are our next steps? So our next steps over the spring and summer is really to publish for open comment the first draft of the National Freshwater Data Strategy. So I'll be really, really excited to, when we get to there, and we will be getting there shortly. So it will be published openly, and we will have an open period of comment from others, from everyone. And we're moving into the fall of 2026, where we will be hosting another workshop. We'll be hosting another in-person workshop. This time it'll be in Winnipeg. And we will be hopefully, and cross my fingers, hopefully, finalizing the wording of the National Freshwater Data Strategy that we can all call a national strategy. And with that, I would say thank you. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for your interest. And I look forward to hearing your input to helping us shape a national strategy. Merci beaucoup pour votre intérêt. Nous avons hâte de connaître vos suggestions pour nous aider à élaborer une stratégie vraiment nationale. Merci.
Thank you so much, Jim. It's great to have an update on the progress towards that national data strategy. I am going to pass things over to my colleague, Natalia Boino. She's the network engagement lead at Our Living Waters, and she's going to moderate a conversation between our panelists, and then following that, we'll go into the Q&A.
Thank you so much for the fantastic presentations. I see that we already have quite a few questions in the Q&A. Before we get to those, there are specific questions for our speakers that I would like to post. So starting off with Jim, success in a national data initiative often depends less on technology and more on whether people actually use the data. So how is the Canada Water Agency approaching engagement with communities, practitioners, and decision makers to ensure that strategy is designed around their needs?
Really, getting feedback from all the different communities is so important, because it goes back to sort of that people process technology approach on dealing with things. Technology is last. It's always about people and process first. And really having the right people, engaging with the right people, and especially engaging with the right people in community, where they're located, is so important. Canada is such a large country. We have such regional diversity that challenges or successes in one area may not necessarily translate to another different area. So we feel that engaging is first and foremost the most important part, and again, it leads to the notion of data governance. Data governance is the piece that will make this work or fail. So if we get the data governance correct, this will be correct. This will work, and that's where it starts from. So it does start from, it pains me to say, because I'm such a technology nerd. I'm definitely a technology nerd, but it truly is more important to have that people and process done properly first.
Thank you, Jim, for highlighting the importance of customizing it to local contexts all across Canada, and that hints at a bit of a federated approach that's very people-centered. Alexandre, for you, my question is about your report. It calls for promoting data domain leadership as part of a strong national scientific data governance framework. So, what role do domain-specific leaders in the freshwater community play in championing common standards and enabling collaboration? Maybe you could share a bit more about how clustering for that reuse, recycle, reimagine data across domains could result in shared benefits and what is needed to incentivize this.
So 3 pieces to your question, and I'll start by doing something which I have not done in the presentation, is being more explicit about what's the data domain. In the report, you can see that we're speaking about domains being places where communities aggregate around production and use of data. So it's something that kind of emerges naturally. If you were able to map basically all the interaction in the system, you'll see those glowing kind of spots where people aggregate. Like people that work with genomics data are not necessarily the same that work with astronomical data, right? So recognizing that there may be different cultures and different groups involved. And so leaders within each of those kind of clusters basically play 2 roles. They kind of are both the glue and the oil within the system. So the glue, because they really have the role of bringing people together. And the oil is more like the oil between gears and machines, like making things work smoothly and like reducing the barriers and all the friction that's existing in these groups. So these are the roles basically of those domain leaders. And so in the presentation, one of the things I mentioned in terms of the benefits, what benefits can you get from getting people to work together? Like the first one is recognizing that it's all about reuse, right? So achieving critical mass is about reuse, is about bringing more users closer to producers. It's about creating agreement on standards and all of that with more people. So it's the whole question of what can we build, and I think we've heard a lot about fragmentation in all presentations, and I think that's kind of the role of the leader or leadership is to kind of bring or reduce fragmentation, bring people together. Lastly, I'll say that you asked about incentives. So how do we incentivize that? So you may recall one of my T-shirts is row in the same direction. So I think that there's a role for all the organizations that are framing the domain itself, like funders and organizations that are setting standards or others. Like there's a role in rowing in the same direction that will create incentives. Like if everyone has common rules, common expectations, it creates an incentive. But ultimately, it's the benefits. Like there are so much benefits in having a system that works well from everyone's perspective that this should be an incentive enough that people will kind of buy in and engage.
Thank you so much. It was a three-pronged question, and you responded to all aspects of it. Maureen, my next question is for you. And specifically from the CIHI experience, what are the essential design choices or the connective tissue that allow a federated model to function as more of a coherent network rather than a collection of silos?
Yeah, I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think just to kind of piggyback on what Alexandra just said around those data domains, and we've had a lot of silos in there. So, for example, CIHI historically has been very focused on health system reporting to the system leaders. And we've got the Public Health Agency and others working on public health and other people working on their own domains. And it's really important to bring to have that connective tissue between all of them, because a lot of the challenges are very similar. They may manifest themselves in different ways. And you need to not only have those data domains, but that connective tissue between, so that you can be that effective network. And that network takes time and effort to do. Like I am very grateful for the fact that our whole organization is focused on data and health data, but most of the other organizations that we work with are focused on healthcare. Like they're focused on delivering the services or managing the system or paying the system. So their focus is not on data. So having us as being able to build those relationships and have the time and commitment to kind of build that network up and kind of go, oh, the left hand over here is doing something very similar to this person over here, and we can connect them up so that we can benefit from those. It doesn't because everyone's so busy in the health system and probably every other sector, it won't happen organically. We've learned that over time. So even with everyone's best interests at heart, so we're able to build those things up as we do. I think the other key piece, and it touches on what Jim said as well, is like trying to think about not just the traditional stakeholders that we have traditionally dealt with, the provinces and territories, the ministries of health, but all of the different stakeholders, and especially over the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years, involving patients and communities in the not just engagement, but also we're now baking that into the decision making and the governance around those decision making key decision making bodies as we move forward.
Our Living Waters being a backbone organization, essentially a network of networks, I very much resonate with what you're saying and the time and the commitment it takes to build trust and to build those relationships and to introduce people to each other to move past silos. My final question is to all three of you. And so from CHI's stewardship approach, we heard about how data serves the public benefit, particularly improving health outcomes. And so this is a little bit of an advocacy question on my part, but how can strong data stewardship in a federated system help translate water quality data into better health outcomes for First Nations communities, especially where governance, service delivery, and health responsibilities are distributed across jurisdictions? So we might see that with Bill C-61 and the different levels of responsibility from municipal, provincial, territorial to federal.
I'm not in the freshwater space, but maybe I will start. I think key is, and our approach has been definitely from a place of cultural humility and learning, in really listening to what the communities need and want to drive them. And I think the other key piece is a distinctions-based approach. It's not a one size fits all, as we heard, like Canada's a big country with lots of different communities, and they will all have unique needs. There may be some underlying similarities in the challenges and issues, but I think we need to have a very focused and committed kind of relationship building before we can kind of get into the solving the data problems, and really understand what the needs of the communities are, to make sure that what data they need and how they need to approach that is done with from their perspectives.
Yeah, I can jump in also a little bit in just want to reiterate, Maureen's point there, right, about, having a need. I really, as a data aficionado, I love data for data's sake, but that's not everybody, and that should not be the case, because why do we collect the data? It has to be for a reason. And really going back to the community or the organization, why do they need that data? They need it for XYZ, clean drinking water, or fill in the blank. What do you need it for? And that's where you come back and say, okay, we have an issue with source drinking water here at this site because we have identified XYZ contaminants, right? And so it really goes back to the need and really identifying how that is, how it's collected properly, how it's being disseminated, how it's being articulated and described properly. And this is where you can have those conversations.
Thank you. So that brings us to the close of the moderated session. And I'd like to now turn to some of the audience questions that have already accumulated in the Q&A. Not all of these will be answered in the time that we have remaining, but they will be sent back to staff who will be responding to these questions. So we'll provide those after the fact. You can also write to the teams directly to pose the questions if they are not answered. So we will be posting their emails afterwards. I can also just add the ones for the Canada Water Agency now. So perhaps one of the first questions that we can turn to answer live. I saw one from Oliver from the IJC, who asks, thank you for these great presentations. I have a question for Jim, the Canada Water Agency. Does the National Freshwater Data Strategy involve coordination with U.S. agencies in Canada-U.S. transboundary basins? The International Joint Commission and its board in transboundary basins may be well placed to support this work.
100%. So IGC is one of those boards I alluded to that have existing mechanisms, existing structure for governance, and 100%. These are the existing structures that we really want to embrace and to strengthen. So from my approach and understanding data is all the IJC, all the different basin boards, commissions that are transboundary. Those are in existing places. So we really want to take and build upon those things. This is really, we all have to work together. There's no one solution that's gonna solve everything.
And then very much speaks to ecosystem integrity, managing these water bodies as a whole. And that's an aspect of freshwater data. I do also see another question for you from Daniel Mendoza. He has two. One is the mandate, or at least one of the mandates of the Canada Water Agency seems pretty clear: construct and implement a national freshwater data strategy. Once those goals are reached, what will be the mandate next? And then his second question is, you mentioned that this task has to involve different stakeholders, government, Indigenous communities, academia, etc. How do you ensure this collaborative effort? I'm surprised that the committee in 2015 only involved federal government agencies and departments. So maybe there's something to clarify there.
So some clarification. So the engagement that we've done across in 2024, 2025, and now in 2026 is really with all sectors, not just federal government. So it's with right across all sectors, and organizations. And so the question, and I smiled when, what will we do after the implementation of a national freshwater data strategy? I put up this background slide because it is our agency background slide. But I find it also very, very meaningful because my head is underwater most of the time. And so if I do this, my head's a little bit above water, but if I'm here, I'm a little bit below water. And that's how I feel most of the time. I'm below water. This is such a large initiative that it really makes my previous work with the World Meteorological Organization and getting 194 member states to agree on a unified data strategy. That was warm up for what we're trying to do here in Canada. In Canada is much more difficult, and I feel that if we are successful in working together in building this, I think, and I would propose that we are now entering the age of water. I think. There was the Bronze Age, the great civilizations had different ages. This will be Canada's age of water. I believe because, either we have too much water or we don't have enough water or the water's not clean. So those are the big challenges that will really strengthen and build our nation. So this is just my perspective, my little perspective. But I think it's something that we have an opportunity to really build upon for generations to follow.
So building on the spirit of collaboration, we actually have quite a few folks that are already starting to potentially volunteer. So for instance, Gabrielle Parent-Dolliner asks, for the Canada Water Agency, how do you plan on using community science data? And just below, we have John Pomeroy asking, how can the CWA work with the scientific institutions to incorporate freshwater research data from instrumented basins and university laboratories? I presume this would fall under the National Scientific Data Governance Framework.
Gabby, John, thank you for the questions. Really, you know where I stand on many of these things is to really to join the data together, and really when we're coming back to joining the data together, we really have to go back to data governance, data standards, metadata standards, all those things are just fundamental. How do we agree upon definitions? What does it mean for this part? Now we can talk together. Let's bring it together. Now we can join data together, because what you mean by this, really somebody else is calling it this. Okay, so now we can join these things together. If we can have this understanding of coming together and agreeing upon simple definitions, and agreeing upon metadata standards, agreeing on data standards, using those standards, then we're getting there.
So there's another question that builds upon this from Trevor Boston. The Gordon Foundation's data stream has been working to aggregate data from government and community-based monitoring across the country for 10 plus years. Is there consideration for working with those who have been working to address these issues to date? Some good ideas, but how can we avoid making all the work that has been done redundant? We also have a question from Heather, who points out to the data that they've been collecting, and asks, we have numbers consistently above acceptable ALV aquatic life reference values for aquatic species. At what point do we have enough data to put bans into action for such pollutants? So this is a bit more action oriented towards the end, but it's again that piece of how do you piece all those bits of data together?
Right. So I'll go with the data stream one first. Data stream has been a valued partner for a number of years now. They've been really at the forefront for bringing together community-based monitoring, especially in the water quality space, surface water quality space. I know they're looking at groundwater now for water quality, but water quality is only one of the pieces right now. So again, let's use the existing strengths that we have and bring it together. DataStream has been awesome at promoting and using data standards. Let's keep at it. Let's make those connections happen. So I think these are all the pieces of the puzzle. I call it a puzzle. It's all the pieces of the puzzle that we have to unlock. And once we unlock those pieces of the puzzle, then the world becomes your oyster, to use a really bad analogy. But it really is it's the ability for us to unlock this puzzle.
So there is another question that speaks to an industry that we haven't yet spoken about. This is from Trisha Burt. I may have missed this, but how are you working with businesses such as companies that provide database and data services, considering standards and what is currently out there?
So industry out there that has our providers. Let's say, let's just we'll just pick on the big three for cloud providers like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, right? They provide the background and whatnot. If I understand the question correctly, I think it is talking about the industry. Is it that industry, or are you talking about water tech industry? I'm not quite sure. The IT industry or the water tech industry?
I don't know if Trisha wants to clarify by responding in the chat to hosts and panelists.
So definitely in the water tech industry, there are a number of fields that are working towards sharing their data, and we would love to connect it and bring them on board. We've had interactions with the Mining Association of Canada. They represent a number of different mining industries across Canada, and they are more than happy to really come together and share that data. So really, these are examples where we can come together and really open and unlock certain things that have been sort of hidden in many ways.
We will take maybe one or two more questions, and then we'll be passing it over to Julie to wrap us up. From Sonia, in the calls for projects from the Canada Water Agency, there were a few calls for the well-planned and organized data acquisition initiatives. For the specific objectives mentioned, is this going to change?
I'm assuming that if I'm interpreting the question correctly, this is on funding opportunities. If I understand the question, if I'm trying to read the question. a little bit? Okay, let's go with that. Funding opportunities will keep coming. So be just be vigilant in looking at the Canada Water Agency sort of website and calls for participation. I think those will all come at their different times.
So building on the spirit of collaboration, we actually have quite a few folks that are already starting to potentially volunteer. So for instance, Gabrielle Parent-Dolliner asks, for the Canada Water Agency, how do you plan or do you plan on using community science data? And just below, we have John Pomeroy asking, how can the CWA work with the scientific institutions to incorporate freshwater research data from instrumented basins and university laboratories? I presume this would fall under the National Scientific Data Governance Framework.
Gabby, John, thank you for the questions. Really, you know where I stand on many of these things is to really to join the data together, and really when we're coming back to joining the data together, we really have to go back to data governance, data standards, metadata standards. All those things are just fundamental. How do we agree upon definitions? What does it mean for this part? Now we can talk together. Let's bring it together. Now we can join data together, because what you mean by this, really somebody else is calling it this. Okay, so now we can join these things together. If we can have this understanding of coming together and agreeing upon simple definitions and agreeing upon metadata standards, agreeing on data standards, using those standards, then we're getting there.
So there's another question that builds upon this from Trevor Boston. The Gordon Foundation's data stream has been working to aggregate data from government and community-based monitoring across the country for 10 plus years. Is there consideration for working with those who have been working to address these issues to date? Some good ideas, but how can we avoid making all the work that has been done redundant? We also have a question from Heather, who points out to the data that they've been collecting and asks, we have numbers consistently above acceptable ALV aquatic life reference values for aquatic species. At what point do we have enough data to put bans into action for such pollutants? So this is a bit more action oriented towards the end, but it's again that piece of how do you piece all those bits of data together?
Great. So I'll go with the data stream one first. Data stream has been a valued partner for a number of years now. They've been really at the forefront for bringing together community-based monitoring, especially in the water quality space, surface water quality space. I know they're looking at groundwater now for water quality, but water quality is only one of the pieces right now. So again, let's use the existing strengths that we have and bring it together. DataStream has been awesome at promoting and using data standards. Let's keep at it. Let's make those connections happen. So I think these are all the pieces of the puzzle. I call it a puzzle. It's all the pieces of the puzzle that we have to unlock. And once we unlock those pieces of the puzzle, then the world becomes your oyster, to use a really bad analogy. But it really is it's the ability for us to unlock this puzzle.
So there is another question that speaks to an industry that we haven't yet spoken about. This is from Trisha Burt. I may have missed this, but how are you working with businesses such as companies that provide database and data services, considering standards and what is currently out there?
So industry out there that has our providers. Let's say let's just let's just pick on the big three for cloud providers like Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, right? They provide the background and whatnot. If I understand the question correctly, I think it is talking about the industry. Is it that industry, or are you talking about water tech industry? I'm not quite sure. The IT industry or the water tech industry?
I don't know if Trisha wants to clarify by responding in the chat to hosts and panelists.
So definitely in the water tech industry, there are a number of fields that are working towards sharing their data, and we would love to connect it and bring them on board. We've had interactions with the Mining Association of Canada. They represent a number of different mining industries across Canada, and they are more than happy to really come together and share that data. So really, these are examples where we can come together and really open and unlock certain things that have been sort of, hidden in many ways.
We will take maybe one or two more questions, and then we'll be passing it over to Julie to wrap us up. From Sonia, in the calls for projects from the Canada Water Agency, there were a few calls for the well-planned and organized data acquisition initiatives. For the specific objectives mentioned, is this going to change?
I'm assuming that if I'm interpreting the question correctly, this is on funding opportunities. If I understand the question, if I'm trying to read the question a little bit. Okay, let's go with that. Funding opportunities will keep coming. So just be vigilant in looking at the Canada Water Agency sort of website and calls for participation. I think those will all come at their different times.
There is also a question from Zafar Adil for you, Jim. For Mr. Young, thank you very much for your presentation. Can you please share some thoughts about how the National Water Data Strategy would interface with a national dialogue on water or interface with policy and decision-making frameworks?
Yeah, so thanks for that question. I think policy is the area that I have been impressing upon my team to really say that, data has to have a reason. So really one of those reasons is to influence and to guide policy and decision making. That's how we can get to better decisions going forward. I think there was an earlier question about, how much data do we need before we can ban certain chemicals? I think that was the gist of that question. Those were the type of things that we need to impress upon our decision makers. To come up with clear data, clear interpretation of data, so that policymakers can make good decisions. And so this is it somehow behooves upon us as data people to provide the example and to provide the showing of data, the presentation of data, so that it's understandable, so that decision makers can make those decisions. People are not interested in your fancy SQL calls. Like, they don't care about that. What they care about, what does this mean? What does this mean to me? What does this table of values mean? Or what does this graph mean? And for us as data people, we need to be able to explain that, to be able to present it in a way that makes sense for decision makers.
So on the note of translating data to policy, I'd like to thank all of our panelists and to invite back our director from Our Living Waters, Julie Wright, who will lead us through the closing. I realize that we are at time, but we do have a closing poll for you.
Yeah, let's get started with that poll. We just need a little bit of feedback from everyone who was assembled today. We're going to do our best to try to answer the 41 questions that everyone posed during this webinar. So thank you very much for your curiosity and for helping to drive forward, these big issues, that we can hopefully get answers from our panels today and their staff teams on where we're headed at the federal level. I just also, as we're filling out this panel, I just want to give a plug to Our Living Water has a monthly member meetup. So just while you're filling in this panel, our next one is on February 25th, and it will focus on source water protection planning. It's Professor Robert Bob Patrick. He's a faculty member in the Department of Geography and Planning at the University of Saskatchewan. So that's February 25th at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and 4 p.m. Atlantic. And then also, I'm just going to very, very quickly go through a few things that Our Living Waters is engaged in. We are a national network on the Make Way charitable platform. We really exist in order to reduce some of that fragmentation and to help all water champions in Canada row together, like Alexandra was showing us. That's why I want that t-shirt. And we do that through bilingual constant communications. We have a newsletter. You can join our newsletter online at ourlivingwaters.ca. And we do host these webinars and focus groups and circle conversations to try to bridge freshwater-based issues from province to province to province. That enabling infrastructure, that collaborative work that we do, we also try to support emerging collaboratives. So we do a lot of that backbone work behind the scenes. And then lastly, I just want to say, part of a collective action work is to have a common goal. And ours is all waters in good health by 2030. And we are actually working towards a shared measurement system that tracks our water governance progress at the national scale. And so you can look to us to be expanding our communications on that in the coming year. We have a workshop coming up in spring 2026. And so that's a great opportunity for people to get involved in what does it take to move from tracking water quality to actually having the right legislative pieces in place to track our progress towards healthy waters. Thank you so much to our panelists today for lending us your brain trust, your collective brain trust. I think I'm not alone in saying how excited people are across the country to see this progress on national data frameworks. We know how important that is to decision making. I myself am also a city councillor. I need that data like yesterday. So really deeply appreciative of the work that you're doing. Thanks again, everyone.